Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Okay. I was trying to connect. Okay. I'm good.
Yeah, you're good. We've got a few more people started. Join in. Do you think it's good to start, or do you want to give it a couple more minutes?
Maybe we wait a few more minutes, and then we can get started.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's Western Continuum Coordinated Entry training. This is going to be centered around kind of a sister training to last Thursday's training. And it's going to center around just the HMIS system update that went out late last week. So it's not going to be a full overview of the HMIS process, but what we're going to do is hit on basically just the new features that came out, and of course take any feedback or questions that anybody in attendance may have. I am here with Javon Clark of Lawrence County Community Action Partnership. Both of us are hopefully on, not muted, so please you can jump in at any time, add any notes or tips on anything that we are showing here. The training is going to be recorded, and hopefully we won't keep you here too long. Just hit the highlights of the new features and answer questions and get you on your way. If anybody does have any questions during the training, there's a chat box hopefully up near the top of your screen within your control panel. Go ahead and type those in, and we will get them answered hopefully during the training, or at least at the conclusion of the training. To get started, and I don't know if Javon, if you have anything you want to say at the beginning. If not, I'll go ahead.
No.
Okay. What I've done here is we've actually created a system update guide. Last week we put out a full coordinated entry guide that kind of covers the whole process, 101 from the beginning to the end. This guide, which we just completed, just covers the updates themselves, and we will make that available to everyone hopefully very soon on the PA Pennsylvania COC website, along with the other training materials and this training video, and we'll have it ready hopefully tomorrow. But then we're going to kind of use this as an outline for the specific features that were updated, and kind of like Thursday's training, we're kind of going to bounce back and forth between the outline as well as jumping into the system to kind of show you just the new features that were put out and answer any questions that have come up. So this is the basic table of contents. There were a few updates done within the intake and assessment part, which is for the assessment centers, and those are the ones that do the actually enter clients into the system. We had some pre-screen updates. We had some screening tool updates as well. So we're going to cover those in detail, and then we'll jump down to the prioritization list, and we had some small updates there for improvements in things like list searching, service acceptance, service inquiry, as well as we have a new request, by request provider transfer feature. So we're going to kind of jump in and kind of jump around the system and cover and demo a lot of these new features. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to start here with the intake and assessment, the pre-screen itself. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and jump into the system itself. Hopefully everyone here is fairly familiar with the system itself. Whenever you are starting a new intake, all the functions intake are done through this coordinated entry option here, and it takes you through the basic steps, which are the intake, the pre-screening, the coordinated, the screening tool, and then the placement. So like I said, we're not going to do a full complete training, but we are going to jump to and start with the updates that we've done, and we're going to start with the pre-screen itself. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and create a brand new client. Let's try Jack Stevens. And this first intake, one thing that we did do on this first page here is we didn't change any of the functionality of it, but we did change some of the wording on it to make it a little more easier to be scripted. So it does ask for first name and last name, as well as telephone number in a more flowing fashion here. When you're first doing the intake, to either create a client or select a new client. So once you have either created a new client or select an existing client, you can, after you've done the sharing itself, you can move to the next step in the process. And now we're going to hit the pre-screening, which we had a number of updates on that we're going to point out. The first update that we can see is we no longer have the redundant questions here that used to ask for the person's first name, last name, and telephone number. Since that information was collected, as we saw before, on the previous step within the client intake, there wasn't a lot of need for those questions to be asked again, so they have been removed from the pre-screen since we have hopefully, we've already collected that information. But we have replaced it with a script to help collect that information. Another change that was made was the 3 main questions that are asked on the pre-screening, which is, are you literally homeless? Are you at risk for becoming homeless? Or is anyone in your home making you feel unsafe or afraid? All of these are now required questions. So before moving forward and completing a pre-screen, you will be required to select yes or no to each one of the questions, so you cannot leave them blank. So that is one change that we've made, trying to fill in, complete as much information as possible. The other change that we have made is the identification or the housing status identification for a client, whether they're literally homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. The system now enforces that the client must be identified as either one or the other. So they either need to be literally homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. So you can only answer yes to one of them before moving forward. If you do accidentally answer yes to both of them, if you try to move forward, the system will prompt with this message saying, hey, you've identified them with those classifications. Please check again and only choose one classification before moving forward. So that is one change that we've made to kind of tighten up and try to streamline some of the data collection classifications within the system itself. One of the other changes that we've done, the fair housing questions are still there and still available, and they ask whether there's been any discrimination during an eviction or a housing search process. And it still does allow you to select an option to send professional a request to the Fair Housing Law Center, request advice. Now, one small change that I actually didn't mention in the previous training that we've done is if you do request legal advice, the system will then, once you finish the screening, it will send an email automatically to the appropriate person with the client's basic information, their name, as well as a telephone number for reaching out and contacting that client and providing advice. Now, if the client, since we no longer have the telephone number and name here, which hopefully should be collected in the previous step, if the telephone number was not collected during the previous step and the client doesn't have one, if you do select legal advice or you continue, the system will ask you to enter in a telephone number for a client before continuing, so that can be included in the legal advice request that is sent, so that the people that are receiving it have a contact point to reach back out to the client. Now, this is only for general assessment sites and general clients, those that are at GVACs, we do not have the other option to send, directly send their information by email for professional legal advice. We want to keep that information confidential, plus we don't even collect that kind of information for those clients. But it will prompt them with a link that the client can go to themselves to submit a request directly for them to receive advice. So that is one change that we've done. So I wanted to mention that to see if that pops up on anybody doing the legal advice. Once you're done with that, you go ahead and hit Save and Return or Save and Continue, and those are the basic updates that we've done within the pre-screen itself. So those are kind of like the three main updates. Now, within the coordinated screening tool, coordinated assessment screening tool, again, we're not going to go over the main, we're not going to go over every single question on here because we've covered that in the previous trainings, especially last Thursday, which are available on the web. Also, I want to go back to the guide within the introduction. We actually are going to have the links to the full training as well as the full guide directly within this guide as well, so that these can be used as kind of like this brother or sister documents to this this smaller just update document itself. I did want to mention that those will be available within this document as well. So the two main updates that we've done within the screening tool themselves is use head of household. What we've actually done here, and I want to show you, is anybody that's a youth, anybody that's a head of household that is 25 or 24 and younger, 25 and under, is identified as a youth and is provided 70 points on their screening score for their overall prioritization. In most cases, for the general assessment site, what we use is we actually use the date of birth to directly determine whether that head of household is a youth or not. But we have found that in certain cases, the date of birth can't be collected or is not available, or the client might not exactly know. So what we've actually done is we've provided the ability to go to the household tab, and we've provided a use of household, head of household checkbox. That can be manually applied for a client that may not have a date of birth collected. That allows the user to manually identify this client as a youth on the list, on the prioritization list, as well as apply the points to them as well. So if you check this box, even without having the date of birth entered, that will show that they are a youth. So that's one small update that we've done to help with the scoring and prioritization. The other big update that we're probably going to spend a decent amount of time on is within the Homeless Assessment Center, or the Homeless Assessment section, and that is the Homeless Episode History Grid. This is probably the biggest update that we've done. And what we've done is we've tried to make this a little more intelligent, allow you to enter information and have the system use this history information to collect a lot of the data elements or fields on the screening tool itself, such as total number of current days, days currently continuous homeless, as well as the number of homeless episodes, number of total months homeless, as well as number of months continuously homeless. So going forward, entering this information directly into the grid is very important because it is directly used to calculate this information on the screening and related to the points for that. One of the main changes that we've made is you no longer enter it directly into the grid itself. Any housing or homeless episode history that you view within the main screening tool will be in read-only format, kind of a visual way to show you what you've already entered. To enter or edit or change any of the homeless history information, what you want to use is this Add Edit Homeless History button. And what that will actually do is when you click on that button, it's actually going to take you to a new screen. And what I'm actually going to do here is unpin the menu here. Little unpin button to kind of open up the screen here, so hopefully it gives everybody a little bit better view. And it takes you directly to a screen where you just fill in the homeless history all by itself. We've actually added some language up here to hopefully help with that, but what this allows you to do is enter in the last 3 years of the client's homeless history or homeless episodes that they've had. And you start with the most recent or the current one, and you kind of work your way backwards for the last 3 years. Much of it works the same as in the past. There are a few new elements that we've added that hopefully will help in terms of collecting information, and as well as it helps calculate a lot of these numbers automatically. So what you can do is you go through and you take the homeless location where they were at, and again, this is only homeless episodes or homeless locations. Any institutional stay or any temporary or permanent, i.e. non-homeless episodes, you do not enter into this field. Those are what we kind of will term as, those will be breaks in between these homeless episodes. So I'm going to go ahead and start filling in the homeless history, and you basically pick from the list that's provided, and we're going to start here. Once you have selected a location from the drop-down, you then put in a provider name or location description, basically anything to help provide information on where the client was staying. Current living situation, this is a new element that has been added, and this basically denotes their current or the most recent homeless episode. It always defaults to the top one, so when you're filling out the new grid, this should default here. And what's good about what that is used for is it helps with the actual length or the time that the client stayed in this homeless location, which is denoted with the start and the end date. Of course, each location or each individual stay needs to have a start date. Also, in the past, all of them required an end date, but for the current living situation, for that one stay that's identified in the top one, if the stay is ongoing, you can leave that end date blank. Before you had to fill in, usually we said like, you know, the current day, but now that's no longer necessary. You can leave that blank to show that it is ongoing. We also have had a break in continuous homelessness as well as the leave reason. We're actually going to talk about this one a little in a secondary step, because what we actually recommend is you kind of go through the grid itself and you enter in the history. Based on their recent stays. So I believe with the location description, you want to name the, the provider name as well as the description name. Try to be as descriptive as possible with that information. And then we're going to add 2 more. Bear with me, and then we'll done here. And then we're going to have this one. I'm going to put 1, 7. We're going to say this one happened pretty far in the past. Okay. And for those that are non-current, you can enter in a leave reason, and it is recommended. Kind of help anybody that's viewing the information as well as yourself for history purposes to know where they went or why they left that specific location. Now, once you've entered in this information, one of the main new elements that we've added is this how to break in continuous homeless episodes. That's one of the most important parts of this actually homeless episode grid, and one of the main calculations that is done within the screening tool itself is to separate their total homelessness from what is this current episode of continuous homelessness. So while the system is fairly smart and can identify certain breaks, it does need your help and users' help in identifying when breaks in continuous homelessness did occur. Now, a break in continuous homelessness is described as any break or any stay in an institutional location that exceeded 90 days, or any stay in a temporary or permanent housing situation or location. And that's basically any non-homeless location that was longer than 7 days. So if any of those occur, an institutional stay over 90 or a non-homeless stay over 7 days, that constitutes a break, and that basically means that episode of continuous homelessness ends. So what this box does is this actually tells the system when, starting from the top down, when continuous homeless episodes stop. So it kind of gives a break between, instead of these being individual stays at locations, it shows, which episodes are together and which ones are broken up. Now, kind of the recommendation, that's why I say kind of usually recommended to fill out the whole grid first, because the best way to kind of determine this and look at this is to basically look between the end date of the previous one and the start date of the next one, because that's kind of the break in time between the homeless episodes. As you can see here, this person was in the TH on 10/8, and then 3 days later, they went into the shelter. As you can see, that break was only 3 days, so that doesn't break either of these rules of 90 or 7. So that means there was no break in homelessness, so you would skip that. And then you kind of work your way down each day to see if there is a break or not. So we go down to the next one, and we go here. He was in the shelter on 8/5, and then he didn't enter into the transitional housing department or transitional housing program until 8/21. So that is basically what, 15, 16 days? So that is kind of in between where it's over 7 days, and depending on where the client was during those times, it could be a break in homelessness. Now, in this specific situation, in between this break between emergency shelter and transitional housing, this client was actually went to a friend's house. So since that is a 16-day break at a temporary or permanent housing situation and it's over 7 days, that would be an actual break in homelessness. So you would want to check this option here to basically say, hey, these first 2 episodes are where the continuousness, it ended right here with this stay here, which is the 3rd one for emergency shelter. And now we can kind of go down again, and we go 8/16 verse 8/21. So that's only a 3-day break. So there's no need to put a break here. And then we've got 3/31 to 6/05, which is a very large break. Actually, let me do, I meant to do 0, 2, 5, 8. There we go. So we look at 2/25 to 6/05, and that is actually a break of over 3 months, so that is definitely over 90 days. So it doesn't matter where that client was. Any break of 90 days or more is absolutely a break in homelessness status. So hopefully as you go through this process, you'll get a little quicker, a little better at determining when and where these breaks are. But this is kind of a way you can go through it individually to show when these breaks occur. So once you're done filling out the grid itself and hoping to determine when these breaks in homelessnesses occur, you can go ahead and hit Save and Close, and that will permanently save the information, and it will return you back to the screening tool, and it will place you directly on the homeless assessment tab once more. And as you can see here, now the grid is completely filled out, but it is in read-only fashion, and all the information is right there in front of you. Anytime you ever need to update or edit this information, you can always click the Add Edit Homeless History button, and it'll always take you into the edit screen to allow you to make any additions, subtractions, changes, anything you want within that grid itself. So that's, like I said, one of the changes between the old version and the new version. There's a kind of side step before you can edit that information. Now, from this information, as you can see, we collect and calculate a whole bunch of the fields on the screen. One of them is, where did you sleep last night? The system automatically takes their current living situation and auto-completes that, which is a bonus. Now, for the actual days and information, it actually did this in the past, but it still does. It records their overall homeless history, which is all of their days homeless that have been, entered into the grid. But with this information, it also automatically calculates their total current continuous days homeless, as well as number of months continuously homeless, total number of episodes, as well as total number of months homeless overall. So with this information, it also automatically answers these two questions right here on the screen that kind of tie into chronically homeless. It can identify if the client has been literally homeless for at least the last 12 months or had 4 or more episodes of literal homeless within the past 3 years that total at least 12 months. So using this information calculated from the grid, it will automatically calculate yes or no for those questions. So as you can see, with this grid and the information, a lot of this information is automatically filled out, which is hopefully a plus, especially the continuous days homeless. But it does make the grid a little bit more important, as it needs to be, correct and entered in properly into the grid for those numbers to come out properly. As I said before, one of the main changes, a lot of it's pretty much the same as before, entering in the homeless locations, the start and the end date. That how to break and continuous homelessness is the main change within the grid itself, and is actually really important, and is kind of the main element that helps us determine what is currently continuously homeless. So even after you've entered the information, when you come back to the read-only screen, the system actually populates with some continuous homeless episode alerts to kind of help identify where breaks may occur. As I said before, any break between 2 episodes that's over 90 days, no matter where they stayed at, institutional, permanent, temporary, it doesn't matter. That's an automatic break in continuous homelessness. So the system will automatically catch those breaks. So even if you miss them while data entering, the system will catch them automatically. The one main ones where we need help with, and the ones that we recommend that you kind of take note at, are the potential breaks. And those are the ones where the breaks occur between 8 and 90 days. Now, the main reason between for the message being a potential is it could be a break in continuous homelessness, or it might not be. It all depends on where the client was during that break-in days, and we need you as the user to help us determine that from their history. Because if they're at an institutional stay or institutional location, i.e. a jail, a hospital, rehab center, they can be there up to 90 days and still not be a break in continuous homelessness. However, if it's just a temporary or permanent housing, sleeping on someone's couch, staying with friends, that's where a break over 7 days constitutes a break of homelessness. So anytime you see a potential break message, double check to make sure that this is properly identified as a break or not, to help ensure that the numbers down here which rely on those break points to be properly calculated. I think that is the main updates for the homeless episode history grid in a nutshell. The other updates that we've done is, as you can see here also within the homeless episode grid, is we're starting to add documentation storage and just file upload capabilities directly within the screening tool. So as you can see with each individual homeless stay, you actually have the ability to upload documentation within the system, and it'll allow you to revisit it, re-download it. It also will allow others that have access to the screening, i.e. other CES partners, to access it and view it as well. To upload documentation, you basically click on the Choose File button, and it will give you kind of the standard upload process where you can browse around your computer and basically select the file that you want uploaded into the system. So you can do that on each of the actual homeless files. And that's where I'm going to go into the edit homeless history. And do a couple of them. Let me add another intake file to this one. Save and close. And as you can see, the difference between, the choose file will mean, hey, there's not a file there, while having a name of a text as well as these icons here will actually show that, hey, there is actually documentation here. Now, what you can do is when you click on it, that may seem like it's kind of the intuitive way to view it, but what that actually does is it just allows you to switch out the documentation. So as you can see, if you click on one of the pictures up there, it just gives you the, hey, let's point to another file and upload it. So you can use that if you want to switch the information. But if you want to view or download the documentation, you want to use the actual options here within the menu options. And for any of those that actually have documentation uploaded, you have the ability to delete the documentation as well as download the documentation. So let's see here, if you just click, I'll actually go here and click download documentation, what it'll do is it'll actually just give you the kind of like the download open save function that a lot of computers have or operating systems have when you're downloading a file. So you can open it right there on the screen, or you can save it, save it to your local computer and look at it for later. So that's kind of how the documentation uploads work within the system. I believe we've also added documentation for those that have a disabling condition so that you can upload verification of disability information there as well. So those are the two places where we've added them, and I think there's plans to add them throughout, additional places in the screening tool. So just keep an eye out for those sections and guidance on what to put in those places. As a note, it's basically the system can handle pretty much any file type, text files, PDF, Word documents. You can even, if you want to like upload a bundle of documents, we recommend using a zip tool. I know a lot of operating systems have them built into them where you can take a number of documents and zip them up together. You can also add zip files to the system during the upload as well, so that you can place a bundle of files there together for the upload and for storage within the system itself. The last update that we want to mention within the coordinated screening tool is also within the homeless assessment section, and it's the current housing status. And this basically just denotes, and it's got the basic HUD categories for homelessness. When initially filling out the screening tool, the system will fill this out by default based on their homeless status classification that they entered during the pre-screen. So if the client was identified as, are they, literally homeless during the pre-screen, the system will automatically set the current housing status to be Category 1 homeless. If the client is identified or classified on the pre-screen as at risk of becoming homeless, the system will know that, read that, and will automatically set the current housing status to be Category 2. So it's just little ways that we're taking previous information that we've already collected to try to help fill out data fields down the road. Now, this is only a default. It can be changed if you want, but I think most of the time the default is going to be the proper answer. And just wanted to note that that is a change that was put out recently. Now, as before, you pretty much go through the entire process, and the system will store all the information as before. Now, I'm going through this. I did want to show one note about the homeless grid, where there's a little bit of a change in, I guess, how it works when you're viewing an edited assessment. As we just saw, when you enter a brand new coordinated screening tool, each of these tabs are broken up into individual pages, and that's where we kind of saw the next in the previous tabs, where you'd actually have to go next, 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 and previous through those tabs to get to all of them. Now, once you've actually saved a screening tool, and it's kind of in an edit mode, and you happen to review one later on, most of the time this is probably going to happen through the prioritization list when you're viewing the record and bringing up their screening tool within the list itself. What it does is it loads an edit mode, and as you can see, like the tabs are gone, so it basically comes with a full page form. And now you can jump to each tab section by using the navigation options up here, but it is a full single page. Now, with the homeless grid update, if you happen to edit homelessness information, which is perfectly fine, and it definitely is going to be needed and done, this will definitely is something that can definitely occur. When you hit save and close, the system reloads the screening tool and puts you directly back on the homeless assessment page. But when you do that, it is going to put you back in the tab form. As you can see here, it's not going to show the full-length form anymore. It's not that, it doesn't affect anything in terms of the data that's collected or anything like that. And we just wanted to point that out, that when you do edit homeless history, it does put you back in the tab form, and you do want to hit the next all the way through, all the way down to the finish to actually hit the final save. to make sure the information gets collected. So we just wanted to point that out so that that is a little bit of a difference when you're editing it, that it might split back to that tab. I believe that is all that we had. Let me check to see if there's any questions. I don't know if there's any. I don't see any questions from the chat here. So that kind of covers all the new information from the intake and screening, the intake assessment side of the training. So what we can go ahead and do is jump over to the prioritization list side. So what we're going to do is we are going to cancel out of this. I'm going to open my menu back up, and let's look at the assessment, intake and assessment is all done within the client tab itself. We're going to go ahead and click on this option, and this is basically the carousel that moves us around workspaces or tabs in the system. And we're going to go to the provider tab, which is where the actual prioritization list is. Then when we get here, I always remind people, double check your provider up at the top. Make sure that is the provider that is your agency, or is it the county version of the agency, assessment center you work at. If it's not, you can always hit Access Provider and select the proper one to make sure it's loaded and refreshed on screen. Of course, the provider prioritization list is within the Western prioritization list folder and can be found directly here within the prioritization list option itself. And as you can see, it's loaded here and shows all the individual clients listed that are on the active list. Now, some of the changes that we've made, or improvements, I'd like to say that we've made, is one of the big ones is available county. This is the county that they are placed when you first do, when the client is placed on the prioritization list. They're asked, what counties, county or counties they would like to be available for services in. This is a way to filter those clients within those counties. Before, you only had the ability to choose a single county, so we have opened that up, and now you can choose multiple counties. So it can basically show you multiple county lists at the same time. It'll be very useful, especially for those assessment centers and organizations that cover multiple counties. Another update that we did is age range. We have added in, let's see what it's clear is. We've added in age range, which basically allows you to search and select the clients on the list, basically the head of household on the list by age. And you've got the 4 specific ranges here to basically pull clients. And it's also multi-select, so you can select more than one range. In this example, this would be anybody between 18 and 30 would be able to be pulled up on the list. And just like all the other filters themselves, the available county and age range, they all work together, so you can use a combination of them to really zero in on the clients that you're looking to find and look to work with. The last update that we've done is kind of a fairly simple one, but I think an important one is we've added the client ID as well as DV AC ID search directly to the bottom of the screen by default. Before, you had to go through an option up at the top of the screen that we've removed. So now you should be able to search by client ID or that DVAC ID that was entered for any DV anonymous client directly within that screen. So that should make that a lot easier to find clients by IDs directly using this field on the prioritization list. I think that's it in terms of the basic functionalities of the search itself. Now, we did make some updates in accordance with service inquiries. The service inquiries we did release probably, I think it's been out there a couple months, 2-3 months, and I think they've been fairly successful. And they're basically a way to begin communication with clients. Say you find a client on the list that you may have an opening for. One of the best ways to begin that process is to send a service inquiry to the client. If we look, each client has an assessing county, assessing provider, and assessing user. These are basically the current provider as well as user that's assigned to them on the prioritization list. And a service inquiry gets sent directly to these providers and these users to basically begin a conversation, to begin working with that client, with the inquiring provider about the opening. So that's a very good feature that I think is being more and more used. If you go into a prioritization list record, the inquiry is available down here at the bottom. It's kind of right next to the service request, service acceptance rejection function, so it is there for general clients. Now, one update that we have made is, for this release, it was just approved. Before, the service inquiry was only available for general clients or non-DV, non-anonymous clients. We have received the okay to allow the service inquiry for DV or anonymous clients. So if you do not see a DV anon client that you might have the possibility of serving or working with, you can now go into their record and the service inquiry will be available, and you'll be able to use that option with them, just like with general clients, and it works exactly pretty much in the same way. So that is a nice change that we've made, being able to allow to open up that feature to basically all clients on the prioritization list. The other thing that we've done is service inquiries, when they have been sent to the assessing client, all service inquiries are actually listed within this folder here. Wow, as you can see up here, you've got this notification. This notification is more just about service inquiries. You have pending service inquiries in your queue. It's more of just an alert or notification to look in your service inquiry folder. You don't want to really try to answer or look for service inquiries in there. Just want to kind of point that out. So if you do see an alert here, a notification, that means you want to go to your service inquiry folder, and that means you probably have pending service inquiries within your agency that providers are trying to reach out to some, one or more of your clients to try to provide a service for. They work pretty much the same as before, where you can answer the service inquiry. But we have seen and added some of the statuses have been updated. We've included an additional statuses to the acknowledged side. We basically made it a little bit more detailed. Before it was just pending and acknowledged. We've actually opened that up. So now when acknowledging a service inquiry, you have the option to record client accepted or client rejected. So basically when an inquiry is sent, it's set to pending. Once you've talked to the client and worked out communication with the inquiring provider, you can then acknowledge the inquiry with whether the client accepted or rejected that inquiring offer coming into the provider. So that is one change that we've made within the system itself to help be a little more detailed with that information. One last update, and I don't think I mentioned this during the last big training, but we also try to streamline some of the processes because I know there's a lot of inquiries that are being done, which is actually great, increased communication and everything like that. What we've actually done is if a client is either receives a service acceptance or is closed off the prioritization list, whether that's they were closed off or actually placed off the list, the system will automatically go back and cancel any service inquiry for that client that may still be pending. So we've added in some processes there to help try to clean up old or existing inquiries. So if you do see it canceled within your service inquiry list, you can basically ignore it because that means that the client has been served in some capacity by some CES partner, or they have actually been removed from the active prioritization list. So we are doing some things like that to try to, like I said, help better manage these. So if a client gets served, a bunch of providers aren't working on pending inquiries to clients that have already been taken care of. So that was in the release as well. So that's in effect we wanted to mention during this update training. I think if we go back, that does the inquiry acceptance, the service acceptance. We did do an update to the service acceptance, and this is more in terms of the prioritization list statuses. Because I know there's a policy change about what statuses a client should be set to based on certain situations. Once a client has been given service acceptance or enrolled into a program, I believe the policy is to set that client's status on the list to in processing. Now that in processing status basically denotes that a person is still active on the prioritization list and is either close to being served by a housing provider or has been served and is enrolled by a housing provider, but is still awaiting placement into a permanent housing unit. So to help with this process, what the system actually does is when you serve a client and you go through the service acceptance process, by clicking that option, and if you do select a permanent supportive, a permanent housing service, which is either permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing, and it is an exception, a service exception. The system, as you'll see here, it's got a lot of language based on these new policies. The system will automatically update that client status to be in processing, whether it's there or not. So that'll help automatically get these statuses in line on the list when a service acceptance is done. Now, for those clients that are enrolled and served and are already in permanent housing, they got enrolled into a program and went straight into a permanent housing unit, from this option you can actually change it and put them into place directly from this function. Now, the place status denotes a person is no longer on the active prioritization list. That means they've been served and enrolled, and they are currently placed and residing in a permanent housing unit. That basically, once they're placed, they are actually, like I said, removed from the active prioritization list, and the continuum no longer sees them as needing service anymore. So you can change that if you want, but only if they are in permanent housing. So once you change, accept, reject from the list, the system will update the status based on what you have entered. It also denotes kind of a two-step process now. So once you do a service accept and they are enrolled into a program and set in processing, once they are placed in the permanent housing, you do want to make sure that you come back and set them to actually place once they actually move into a permanent housing unit, permanent housing situation, so that they can be properly placed and pulled off the active list. So I need to enter in an intake note. Hopefully your notes will be a little more descriptive than mine. And now we can hit save. And that will place the client. As you see, he is placed and will be off the active prioritization list. That's a change that was done within the service acceptance with the help with the statuses. I think the last thing that we want to cover, looking at it, I don't see any questions yet. Anybody have to add anything? We have added a provider transfer function within the system. As I kind of mentioned before, each person on the prioritization list is assigned an assessing provider, an assessing user. Let me go down to a non-DB person. There we go. Go to test. And that is the person, the initial assessing provider is the person that originally placed them on the list. Did the original assessment and originally placed them. If for some reason that client moves or starts being served by a different assessment center in a different county, and there's a need for them to be transferred to an actual different provider, the system will allow you to request a provider transfer. And what you can do is you can actually go into the record itself, and there will be a request provider transfer option. What you can do is check that box and basically hit save. And at that point, what will happen is an email will automatically get sent out to the appropriate person and notify them that, hey, a transfer has been requested. It includes a little bits about the client and who requested the transfer. And then the appropriate people will be back in touch with the person that requested the transfer to facilitate it. Right now, only the administrators, CES administrators have the ability to actually perform the transfer, but we want to make everybody aware that this functionality is in the system if needed by request, and we're kind of like a beta phase to kind of test it out to see how the request goes, to see if we need to open it up to everybody or what changes need to be made to the process going forward. So that is in the system. There is one other update that I do want to mention, and it is akin to a transfer, but it's not really a transfer. And this kind of relates to especially those providers or agencies that serve multiple counties or have multiple assessment centers in multiple counties. When you do the assessment and do the placement on the prioritization list, the system prompts you for, hey, who is the assessing or placing provider for this information. Now, for those that only have a single, entity, agency ABC, it automatically defaults, but those that have multiple counties can pick and choose. I know this was kind of a newer concept that kind of got learned through the process, so there may be some times where a person was accidentally placed in the wrong county or the wrong assessment center. So what we've actually done to address this, or to help with this, is, I want to go to an example here. Instead of doing a straight up transfer, which this really isn't, this is more of a correction of what assessment site they should be assigned to. The system at the bottom has a placing provider option. And this basically shows, and it determines, hey, who the current placing, who the original placing provider is. And that kind of also determines, what assessment site they came from and helps with initial reporting. And that is a little bit different than the assessing provider, which is who is currently assigned to them. Now, at this point in time, I think it's 100% of the assessing providers are exactly the placing providers since we haven't done any transfers. Now, if you go to a client that wasn't placed by your agency, this will be completely read-only. You basically, of course, can't change it. We don't want to allow you to change it. So what we've actually done is for those agencies for those clients that you have directly placed, and maybe you made a mistake, oh, I put them in the Jefferson County provider and they should have been in the, Mercer County provider, the system will provide the ability to allow you to change the placing provider to a different county if a mistake was made. Because I know we've had some questions before of, hey, how do I change the county the person is assigned to, because we made a mistake during the initial input. So the system will allow only the agency that placed them to make a change to that placing provider within the system itself without having to go through the whole transfer process. So I did want to mention that that is available in the system as well. And it basically will consist of a drop-down where you can basically change the county, from Jefferson to Mercer, and then once you hit save, the new placing provider will be updated to the proper county that they probably should have been placed in. I think that does it. It kind of covers all of the recent updates that were done. I'm going to go ahead and check the chat. I don't see that we have any questions here. I don't know if, Davon, you have anything to add or clarify or anything to touch upon?
No, not at this time. I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Well, like I said, we did record this training, so we are hoping to get this up on the PA Pennsylvania COC website within the Western Coordinated Entry area, as well as get this this update guide there as well, so that these materials are out there for everybody to see. I guess I will let everybody go. We will stick around just for a couple minutes. Anybody have any questions, go ahead and enter them into the chat, and we will try to get them answered before we take off. Thank you for everybody for coming, and we appreciate your time.